Every great city has its tales, and I've been documenting their stories and people for over 20 years. This is Tales of a City. Well, welcome once again to another special presentation of Tales of a City. It's not very often that I get to spend time with another documentary filmmaker, let alone one who is also one of the most respected journalists and broadcasters on Australian television. I'm speaking, of course, of Ian Henschke.
This is the story of how a lanky young Australian called Herb Elliot and his eccentric but revolutionary coach Percy Cerutty take on and beat the world.
Herb Elliot of Australia, whom many say is the world's greatest miler of all time.
Well, Ian Henschke, thank you so much for spending some time with us. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, I've been for a run this morning. As you may have seen in the film, Percy Cerutty says only the fit are fearless, so I thought I'd better put in a good run.
Indeed. Well, speaking of the film, that's exactly why I'm here. It's somewhat of a departure from your stellar career as a broadcaster and journalist, and now a documentary filmmaker. Tell us, how did this come about?
Well, my brother was quite a good runner. In fact, he was the state schoolboy champion, and he went on to win a state title, and he was a very good athlete. When he was at school, he was given a book by the teachers for being top of the school or something.
Oh, yes, as I did in those days. And
the book was called The Golden Mile by Herb Elliot. Now, Philip got that when he was about 16, and he's about 10 years different, so I was about 6 or 7, I think, at the time. And anyway, I can remember reading the book, and Herb Elliot had won the gold medal in 1960, and it was the first Olympics I can remember, and watching it on TV and seeing the Australian run so far ahead of the field just amazed me, and I kept it in my mind as something that I would like to do one day. I mean, I wanted to run, I wanted to become an Olympian, and of course I didn't, but I became a television person, and I worked in television. And then 1984, when I bought the rights to the book The Golden Mile, and then what happened was they changed the tax laws. So you used to be able to get very high tax concession for investing in films. Anyway, cut a long story short, it never got made, but I have always wanted to make it. And so now, in the eventide of my life, I'll be 70 in a few months' time, I thought, I want to do this, I want to make it. And I realised that Herb Elliot was still alive. He's now 86 years old, and with a bit of twisting, because he didn't really want to do it. I said, please, do it.
He's always hid his light under a bushel somewhat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose he sees that as being something that happened a long time ago, and he says he admires my persistence and my passion, and he said he'd be part of it. So we caught up after his 86th birthday. He had a big celebration in Melbourne with his family, and then he said, look, you've got a day with me. If you want to do an interview, we can do it. So I took him back to Portsea, where he trained, and we actually did the interview. And then the next thing, of course, was collecting the archival material that would give a viewer an idea of what the world was like in the 1950s, what Australia was like, what the atmosphere was like. And that's what I've tried to do in the film. Remind people that when people used to run in those days, there was a big barrier, and it was called the 4-minute mile barrier.
Yes.
And it was almost like the speed of sound, or people thought, what will happen to you if you run faster than 4 minutes for a mile? Will your heart burst? Will you drop dead? And anyway, Roger Bannister, who was an Englishman, and he was actually a medical student, I think he may have even become a doctor by the time he did it. He broke the 4-minute mile. He did 3:59.4 in 1954, and everybody said, "Wow, this is amazing." And then very shortly after, an Australian broke the 4-minute mile. The second person was John Landy, who went on to become governor of Victoria. But then over in Western Australia, this teenager, he was running some phenomenal times, and Percy Cerutty went over there, and he's this very eccentric coach. And he saw him run this race at the schoolboy race, and afterwards he said, "This lad," he said, you will run a 4-minute mile within 2 years." And
wow.
And Elliot thought, you know, this fellow's come from the east, you know, with Western Australia back then was very isolated.
Yeah.
You know, 300,000 people. You've got to remember Perth was a very small place, and he's just one teenager in Perth, and he's saying, you're going to be a world beater. And anyway, Herb said that got into his brain. And what I find fascinating is that if you have someone who can believe in you, and they believe that you can do something, then often people do it. So it's a story about how this coach said, I think you can do it. And then the training they did was just phenomenal. It wasn't run on ovals, they ran on the beach, and they ran up sandhills. They did very unusual training by the standards of the day. And now you would say what they were doing was quite remarkable, because they ate healthy foods. They ate, I mean, Percy Cerity used to go down to the local fishing fleet and get a bag of fish and then bring back, and they'd sit there and eat you know, fish, steamed fish, or whatever. And
well, fresh produce, nothing better for the body.
And they would eat rolled oats, because Percy saw that horses ate oats, and you know, and they could run a mile in 2 minutes, you know. But he had, but he also knew that oats were good for you, so they ate. So he's probably the first person to bring muesli to Australia. And,
right. But having seen the film myself, it strikes me that it's a film that not only appeals to the athletic area, but it's quite inspirational.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to make, because I mean I was inspired by Herb Elliot and I was inspired by Percy Cerity as well.
Well, he's a very interesting character.
Yeah, I mean Cerity was very unusual. He was a person who'd smoked and drank and had a highly stressed life, and when he got to be about 40 odd, a doctor said to him, "You're going to be dead, you know, mate. You know, you can't live like this. You're going to be death's door sort of thing." And Percy then went and read and learned as much as he could about how you could heal yourself. And he started initially walking and then running and then looking at diet and looking at exercise and all that. And he basically transformed himself.
So he's somewhat ahead of his time.
Yeah, and by the time he was 51, he was the Victorian marathon champion. Now, back in those days, most people, you know, if you were 50, that was the time when you started thinking about, you know, giving up a bit, you know. I mean, it was it was a very unusual person. And he used to put a sign up above his door saying that he was the maker of champions, you know. So, you know, in a sense, he would say, if you have got the belief in yourself and you want to follow my method, the Cerity method, I can get you to be the best you can possibly be. Now, that may be a world champion. He took people like Albie Thomas, who was another one who ran there back then. He was only very short. He was, I don't know, 5'9" by, you know, athletic standards, quite small. He broke the world record for the 2 mile. Herb Elliot broke the world record for the mile. They had another runner there with Dave Power, broke the world record for the 6 miles. So this is in the days of miles, but the Cerity athletes were what the Kenyans were today. You know, when you watch the Olympics and they go, oh, look at all those Kenyans, you know, they would look at all these guys that have been trained by Percy Cerity. So he was unusual, and I've always sort of thought, not only was it unusual from that point of view, he believed in the philosophy of the ancient Greeks, and he used to talk to them about philosophy a lot. And he said that we need to be at one with the world that we're around, the natural world. And so when they ran, they would run up the sandhill, and when they were exhausted, they would run into the icy ocean. Now, today they call that ice bath.
Yeah.
You know, he would say, when you're burning hot, run into the ocean. And this is the bottom tip of the Mornington Peninsula, where it's freezing, absolutely freezing. So they were doing that. Then they would eat their fresh fruit, almost a paleo diet, you know, just nuts and fruit and vegetables and steamed fish, and they didn't eat a lot of meat. And then you had this skinny schoolboy who got transformed into this world beater, Herb Elliot. Then he goes out, and in 1958, he never loses a race.
44 races, I believe.
44 professional races, and he never loses a race over the mile of 1500 metres. Now, he had a 4-year career and never lost a race. Now, sometimes he won by a 100th of a second, but Elliot says the difference between being a champion and not being a champion is not very much. But you actually have to have that mental attitude, and you can take that attitude into life. You know, if you want to be a winner, and you want to, and it's almost like a dirty word these days, saying, you know, you want to be competitive or want to be a winner. But Elliot says it's about being the best you can be. It's not necessarily about beating that other person, but if you are absolutely the best. And I found it so funny because at one point, quite seriously, I thought, I've got to ask him what his secret was. Now, what was this secret to never getting beaten? And he looked at me and he said, well, you just had to run to the point of death. Elliot set his goal, I want to win a gold medal, I want to be the best I can possibly be. He achieved that goal, and then he went on to other things in life.
And he was quite a leader in his varying fields of business.
Yeah, well, he headed a number of major companies. He was the head of, I think, Boral in Europe. He was over there when Percy Cerutty died. He was the head of Puma, which is the big athletics company. He was in the Shell chemical division. He won he was offered a scholarship to Cambridge, and he did a science degree at Cambridge, and then worked in the Shell chemical area. And then, towards the end of his life, he worked for Fortescue Metals as a director, and then he became chairman of the board of Fortescue Metals, which is one of the biggest mining companies in the world.
So the screening at the Regal Theatre, is that open to the public?
Yeah, it's all open to the public. You just go these days, like everything, you buy everything online.
Yep.
It's Run Nation, R-U-N, Nation, Film Festival 2024. And then you'll see how do you just buy tickets, and you go to, I think it's Ticketek or
Indeed. That's the 15th of August.
15th of August, yeah, at 7 o'clock at night, and you get one screening only. So, and I'll be hosting the screening because it's in Adelaide. So
you'll be doing a Q&A?
Well, I'll be doing a Q&A. I think they give some prizes away. The people that run the Run Nation Film Festival, I don't know what they give away, but they said they'll be giving away some stuff. And I'll go to Melbourne and I'll watch it with Herb's family. But Herb won't be watching it. His son said he's moved on. You know, but I think he will. I think his son will probably encourage him to have a look at it. You know, it's a bit like saying, Dad, look, you know, it was a long time ago, but you were great. It's worth remembering.
Well, Ian, thank you very much for spending time with us and talking about this wonderful film. And guys, I really recommend that you do. If you're in Adelaide, go and see it at the Regal Cinema. If you're in Melbourne, we'll put up on the screen the details. Make your bookings. Don't miss out on this extraordinary documentary. It'll touch you in so many different ways. Thank you very much, Ian.
Thank you, Jethro. Only the fit are fearless.
Indeed. Cheers.